Hi, everyone. I am Hannah Arndt, the history coordinator here at OMA. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight and supporting our history speaker series. Tonight, we have a wonderful speaker, Tshweu Moleme. As always, I want to acknowledge Deanne McCullum at Rogers for sharing the OMA history speaker series on Rogers Cable. Longtime Orillian Tshweu Moleme is an educator at Lakehead University, Faculty of Education. Moleme brings an extensive background in leadership and advocacy in both the private and public sectors. In 2020, he received the prestigious Community Development Award for Exceptional Role Models with contributions to the university and society from the University of Toronto. Moleme remains active as an academic and activist with passionate contributions in the promotion of Black history and cultural understanding, which have also made him a prominent voice in Canadian social discourse. As always, February is Black History Month. In tonight's talk, Moleme will be speaking on lessons from the past traditions and navigation in the present with the future in mind. He will reflect on the importance of history and the power of wisdom as guidance. So as always, at the end of Moleme's talk tonight, there will be a Q&A. So yeah, sit back and enjoy, and I'm gonna hand it over to Moleme. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hannah. Thank you so much for the introduction. Much appreciated. It truly is an honor to be here, invited by OMA to share one or two things on myself and my people, our history, and thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I would also like to thank you all for the good work, by the way, that you do for the people of Orillia and surrounding areas as a museum of art and history. And for people out there, in case you did not know, OMA does incredible things such as, programming for kids in the summer, if you're looking for things for kids to do in the summer. So please do check them out. Huge thanks to Ninette, Jessica, Rachel, Hannah, and the rest of the OMA team for inviting me this evening. I really appreciate that. I would also like to thank all people present here. I know there are some familiar faces also here. Some I might not know, but I really appreciate you being here, and I hope to learn more and perhaps even meet you in future. Well, what can I say? I feel honored and I'm quite moved actually, by this presence, this gathering of everyone here online. I thought, this would be a gathering of one or two people, but I see more than two people. So I'm grateful for that. I'm thanking you all tenfold for taking the time to spend the evening here with us. I would like to preface this by stating that I was born in South Africa, apartheid South Africa, that is. So much of my childhood is also located in that era, as you will likely pick up in what I'm about to share. All right, so, oftentimes when faced with a situation such as an invitation to speak at such an august event, I ask myself, what will Mma say or do? Mma is my late maternal grandmother. She meant so much to me, and I will always look to her for wisdom, even in days long after her departure from this planet. We called her Mma as in mother and Oma, grandmother. So let's consider our gathering here this evening to also be a place where Mma's words of wisdom are transmitted through me to you. I just thought it was so cool that Mma, Oma, and Oma, that is the museum, have such a beautiful connection in sound, perhaps for very good reason. I know that this is Black History Month, but I must say that my conversation will be covering just a few items out of the many, millions upon millions of items that are out there in the traditional cultural tapestry of Black folk the world over. Thus, the little that I share here this evening on the tradition of oral history or the passing of knowledge from one generation to another could never represent all of the vast, never-ending traditions of what we might call, planetary or hemispheric Blackness. We are talking about well over 1 billion people. So you can just imagine diversities and differences therein. And of course, I could never speak for everyone. That's why it's best for me to share my experience, my story instead. But before I go far, I would also like to begin with something my wisdomic GPS, that is my maternal grandmother, Ma, taught me many moons ago, which was to always share a bit about myself when I meet someone new. I was reminded of this on Monday, actually, when I attended a student conference that is currently taking place, that is this week at Lakehead University here in town, under the guidance of the incredible Dr. Gary Plume and his awesome team. These are students or youth that are coming from across Canada and other parts of the world, gathered here in Orillia to tackle some of the world's most pressing issues of the day, such as questions around environmental sustainability, education, jobs, AI, media, and so on. So to kick off the conference, students did these intro presentations where they touched on who they were, what part of the world they were coming from. It was beautiful to hear students present on the beauty and challenges of their respective nations. These challenges that their nations faced, the good and the bad. This was a very special event that had us smiling, laughing, and crying. Indeed, to hear someone speak of who they are and where they come from is quite different from what we might read about in a book or Google. As one student from Guyana said at the event, what they are sharing isn't something you can simply get through a Google search. A reminder that not everything is on Google, and if granted an opportunity for a heart to heart encounter where you learn about someone and their culture, seize upon it if you really, truly want to learn about someone. I'd take that over a Google search any day. Students also mentioned they also reminded of another life lesson my maternal grandmother Mma would always emphasize upon, that one should always speak of who they are on both their maternal and paternal sides of the family, if able to, when meeting someone new. So when you meet someone, you'd share who you are on your mother and father's side by name, identifying, what part of the country or continent or the world you come from, and so on. You might ask, why do these introductions with strangers perhaps that you meet? Well, reasons are many, and it is not just a case of family pride, which is also not a problem, by the way, but we have to be proud of, who we are and our roots. But more importantly, we need to let others know who we truly are. So let me just briefly state that I am Tshweu Moleme, the son of the Basotho and the Botswana people of Southern Africa. On the paternal side, I am the son of the Moleme and Mueng families. And of course, on the maternal side of the family, I am the son of the Rampore and Mabue families. This isn't all, families and names, by the way. This is just a glimpse of the family tree, which I'm sharing here. It would take a lot more time to share all, as there'll be other names to add and so on. The family tree is huge. So by stating where I am and where I'm coming from I think right now is sufficient, although it might not satisfy the whole, need for the entire family tree that is to be shared. But I think this is good enough, just in terms of who I am and who I truly am. But back to other reasons why we do such. I once met and spent many days with a cousin of mine without knowing this was my cousin. Not only that, but I was introduced to them by another cousin who told me that this was their best friend. Believe it or not, this best friend was a long lost son of my uncle's. This is on my mother's side of the family, one of my mom's younger brothers. This long lost cousin was born in exile while his mother and my uncle had gone underground trying to stay away from apartheid forces of South Africa at the time who wanted them dead because of their activism and militant anti-apartheid work that they were doing within South Africa. So their son was born outside of South Africa, and of course things happened, and parents separated and relocated. Anyways, I spent time with my cousins, or my one cousin and his best friend at the time. My one cousin that was I was visiting, and myself had no idea that his best friend was, in fact, also our cuz, our blood. Have you heard of these powerful words? Blood is thicker than water. Here we were, hanging out with our blood without knowing. It was just unbelievable how much fun we had together, like family, how we connected. Everything just clicked. I still remember the late nights we'd had together, hanging out and laughing hard until I had to leave to go back to my parents' house before returning back here to Canada. These cousins lived in a province called the Free State in South Africa, and my home was Johannesburg, which is the province of Gauteng. So I had to travel between the two places and, of course, make my way back to Canada eventually. Now, fast forward a number of years later, I get a call while here in Canada, a call coming in from South Africa from the family. It was the family asking if I remembered meeting my cousin's friend when I was home. And I said, yeah, of course. Yes, I do. We had a great time together. And then, shortly after, my maternal grandmother, Mma, with whom I'd spent many years as a kid, learning lots and lots from her, she got on the phone with me amidst all the happiness I could hear in her background as family rejoiced, happy that they had found their long lost son. I'd say more on how how they reunited, but that piece alone could take us well over an hour. Anyways, back to the phone call with Ma. She was not too happy with me. She was disappointed. Why? Because I had not done what I was supposed to have done when meeting my cousin's friend for the first time. Now, growing up, grandmother would teach me family praises, which one had to recite almost poetically when meeting a new person. Those praises, which we called in our mother tongue, or our mother tongue, Sesotho and Setswana, we call them maboko. Those praises are like our IDs that we carry with us. They say who we are. And in just 2 to 3 minutes or so of sharing the praise with someone, connections can be easily made. It's like you are reading them, your family tree, connecting, many last names, mentioning areas the family has lived in, under which kingdoms and chieftainship over centuries and so on. This is history that precedes apartheid South Africa and colonization. Had I mentioned to my cousin's friend which family I came from, mentioning his father's family name while reciting our family praise as grandmother once taught me to, I would have made my then newly found friend and now cousin aware that I was his family by blood, thus unlocking some kind of historic code in our family tree. I had failed to do what grandmother had taught me. You can imagine the scolding I would have received over that phone call, which went from, the excitement of breaking news to me about a friend that was in fact a cousin. He was family not only to me, but to his best friend, the cousin I was visiting, the cousin who'd introduced me to him. Now, a lot happens after all the excitement and scolding by grandma, family reunions and all. Just an incredible story. Again, would take hours, discussing that part of the story, but I'll skip. Now, you might ask why I share this story. Why? Well, what I'm hoping to share here this evening is the importance of history and wisdom as guiding forces in the shaping of the present and the future. To remind that we should never forget or dismiss lessons from our elders because we will regret. Grandmother had prepared me, armed me to the teeth with family history from a very young age. Oh, history, our brilliant teacher. Oh, wisdom, our GPS. I was grandma's child. I'd pick her over my parents any day. I just loved her so much. Of course, this being close to Oma surprised many, as she was a very strict grandmother, not as sweet and one to spoil me as my parents were. But I was always happy with grandmother because she kept it real. She taught me so much. I was the lucky grandchild. I just loved spending time with her in her corner house yard, where I would spend the day lost in her garden. According to grandma, being a corner house meant that we were the face of or the first impression of her street. So we had to work hard. We had to work very hard to keep her place, as she would say, speak and span. She just loved keeping her house nice and neat, so people going by could be, impressed not only with our house but our street. If we were not working on her beautiful flowers, we were dealing with the vegetables in her backyard, in the vegetable garden, or her peach and fig trees, which you'd often find us also seated under, sipping on some tea, some rooibos tea or joko tea during our midday breaks, especially when there was no school and I would spend, my days with grandma. This was usually when I'd leave grandma, to relax. When we did our tea time, I'd leave her to relax under the tree. She would usually just sit there, read her Bible while I went off to play with friends on the street or just playing around the yard. But she'd keep an eye on me and the time, always. So you had to behave, even when you thought she was not watching you. Yes, I loved spending time with my grandmother, and she loved my presence and giving me all the family history and wisdom she could. To this day, I'm the only person in the family with the oral biographies of many members of the family, including all of her children. She taught me things like the consequences of naming or not naming a child after said person on the family tree. For example, according to her, and these are her words, if one was named after a drunk in the family, they'll also likely become a drunk later in life. I recall her calling, I recall calling her to share the birth of one of my sons when he had just been born, and she thought I'd mentioned a particular name. She was being thrown off, of course, by old age and hearing issues. So I had to address that very quickly and say, no, grandma, this is the name. Because she had thought that I had named the son after a person that she did not want to see, whose name she did not want to see repeated in the family history, given how that person held themselves, or perhaps the one they were named after too, how they held themselves out there in the world. Grandmother was very thorough and detailed in the lessons she offered. But did I listen? Not always, as seen in the case of the long-lost cousin. Grandmother had picked me as her keeper of the family archive, which was passed on to me by her through the tradition of oral history. Yet at some point, I forgot to pay attention to this great honor bestowed upon me. We should never forget or disregard lessons from our elders, for they know what it is they are teaching us, tried and tested by their very history. In other words, they know what they are talking about. Oh, history, our brilliant teacher. Oh, wisdom, our GPS. In the world we live in today, we think of a GPS as some sophisticated tech system that can take one from this one place to another with great precision. Well, grandmother's wisdom was also and continues to truly be my GPS. Her lessons, even years after she has passed away, continue to guide me in many ways. For instance, if a member of our family is lost on something, they could reach out to me, and I'd simply look through the oral archive bequeathed upon to me by grandmother. We have been able to navigate from point A to point B with such knowledge from grandmother. We have been able to make connections. We have been able to survive. We have been able to make sense of the world's questions we find ourselves facing today. This brings me to the importance of family gatherings as well, another tradition we should not forget to mention, which are usually a big deal in many cultures. And here I wish to simply share on what I know, and I'll keep it very brief. Family gatherings, family gatherings aren't only about having a few drinks or a good time. In my experience, such gatherings have also served as opportunities for people to meet for the first time, that is introductions, or again, with elders such as grandmother playing an important role of sitting everyone down and walking us all through our family history at such gatherings, and even welcoming new faces such as babies into the family, making connections by names to those present and those long gone, sharing the stories and biographies of family members, sharing important family possessions such as family praises and so on. With such wisdom and guidance, the family can navigate better into the future, knowing who they are, where they come from, and the direction in which they might be headed, or the best one to take. They are better positioned by the wisdom, positioned by the familiar GPS. Of course, we're now in the world of, your modern day GPS and AI. But if you think about it, both the GPS and the AI are also informed by history. This is to say or emphasize that we cannot dismiss history and the myriad of lessons that it has and continue to offer us. We sometimes try to forget the unforgettable, such as important lessons passed down to us. That is especially the case today, where some of us might want to imagine the world or the future without history or history that informs such a future or futures. History archives, it tells us what happened so we do not repeat mistakes of the past. Not only that, but it also helps us to determine what could possibly happen based on that history. I thought that while looking back and reflecting, with the present considered, and of course looking ahead, why don't we consider the wonderful things done by those who've paved the way for us? Of course, we are now in a polarized world, but we cannot allow such polarity to erase great things that have and continue to happen, as well as positives ahead, as we look to possibilities informed by history. In short, and taking into consideration the fact that I speak during Black History Month, sharing in our stories and history, I would like to say that the journey traveled by Black folk on this planet is a long one, long, very, very long one, from the painful transatlantic slave trade to modern day, transnational, what I call the transnational self-determined GPSing in the world, where we can now be where we want to be by choice and decide on what it is we also want to do. Of course, not everyone has got such an opportunity. but those privileged to have such have got to offer some acknowledgement. So as we look back and consider the present, let us think about the work that has gone into where we are today as society. We did not just arrive or find ourselves where we are. There's a story behind your travels and even some hard work and pain behind it too. Perhaps some wisdom too behind those travels and journeys. So let us honor those who've done all the hard work of carrying and sharing wisdom, the hard work of, guiding us into the best possible direction in life. We do build on shoulders of great giants who've come before us, paving the way. Think of the many roads, the highways, and trails across Turtle Island here, long toiled and walked by indigenous peoples of the land. Life did not start, nor will it end with us. Many came before us to make the journeys ahead lighter for us. Let us pay it forward. It is a circle, the circle of life. O history, our brilliant teacher, O wisdom, our GPS. Let us do our part. Let us not just listen and forget. Trust me, you do not want a grandma scolding later in life. So listen, pay attention when grandma speaks, or any elder really. In sharing these words with you tonight, I am also hoping that you will see not only the wisdom, but other virtues instilled in us by our elderly, by those pioneers who've walked and toiled, clearing the path for us. They've taught us about integrity, courage, fairness, and justice. Let us put those lessons into practice. My message to everyone on this beautiful Black History Month is to try and find who you are, and if successful, please do not take that for granted. So the journey ahead for you can be navigated with a bit of ease, accompanied by wisdom passed down to you. Those who've come before us and their wisdom are the flashlights that will beam into paths ahead for us. Don't take them for granted. Don't take their hard work for granted. We must keep alive traditions such as those of relying on wisdom from our elders to show us the way. Indeed, history does serve as an incredible anchor and a navigational tool for the future. O history, our brilliant teacher, O wisdom, our GPS. I will end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Honestly, it made me reflect on my family and my family's history. I'll let people begin to, percolate some questions in their mind, but I've written a couple out to get started. I had the pleasure of taking an oral history class in my undergrad, and I learned that it's quite an honor to be the one in a family to have those oral histories passed down to you. How did your grandmother choose you to be the knowledge keeper for your family? Because that seems like it would be quite an honor.
Thanks for the question, Hannah. Yeah, it surprises me, a question I'm still kind of battling to this day. I would say that given the kind of time that I spent with her, and perhaps, of all her children and grandchildren that she looked at, she came to, this decision that I was one she could trust with this incredible honor, really, in the family of, keeping this knowledge. So I think I wish if she was around, I would have liked to. I think she would be the best one to answer the question. But I think that yeah, she after spending a long time with me and seeing perhaps how I thought, my curiosity.
Yeah.
I was the kid who was always saying, from a baby, I was the baby that was always holding on to grandma's, dress wherever she was going, I was just
Yeah.
always there with her. And growing up, I would be like, Grandma, can you, if we had friends over, can you tell us that story? And then, of course,
Oh,
eventually, it was her asking me to tell stories that she had shared, right? And I
yeah.
think in that process, perhaps maybe that's where she also picked up that I could keep the knowledge and maybe pass it on for the family as well.
Um, Jumping off of that question, do you notice anybody in your family doing the same thing that you did as a child to get knowledge from you?
Because I've been in Canada for almost 30 years now. It's really hard to say, but I mean the family members that I speak with, uh, you know, um, despite being far away. Um, and just some young people in the family. I can see a few that I
Okay,
can
good,
trust with such. So at some point,
good.
I will have to, sit them down, teach them stuff, and perhaps
Yeah,
maybe even write something that they can look at and
yeah.
see what they can do with.
Beautiful. Okay, so I have a question from Janet. She asks, do you think that family history and wisdom passed on within families is now jeopardized by the prevalence of social media and electronic communication? That's a good question.
Yes, I think so. I think because we are now in this era of social media, technology, AI, and so on. For some people, it's almost hard to imagine themselves just sitting down, and just conversing and talking about family history. I think the technology is just overpowering and taking over, which is a great danger that we need to watch for. So the answer will be yes, most definitely, that is the case.
She also asks, do you think that survival skills are threatened by a shrinkage in traditional family communication?
Yes, I think so. I think so. Yeah, a lot of families, I mean, the family structure isn't what we used to know nowadays, right? It's just everyone is, this person is over there doing their own thing, this person is over there. Family isn't what it used to be, right? We don't have like, the old system where we might all be living, on a village, and we're like, 5 minutes away from one another. So yeah, that challenge is also there, most definitely.
Yeah. Another question is, do you have any tips for sharing family history in an age-appropriate way to children of different ages? That's a good question too.
Yeah, that's a very good one. And I will say what I usually say to my students at the university with kids, stories, and I think, and storytelling is a good way of doing it. If you are creative, you can even write something about family history, right? In the form of a story that might appeal to children. Um, I think that might be a very good approach. I do that with my kids sometimes. I'll tell them stories, just oral history. We'll have games, traditional games we play that I used to play with my grandmother, and even through the playing of games, there's also a story in that. The tradition of the family is also passed down. In fact, my 8-year-old the other day came to me and wanted to play an old game that I used to play with him, which was also something that was passed down to me. And I was surprised because it's a game we haven't played in a very long time, and it's a game that's going generation to generation, but he still remembered. So in replaying that game, I was left knowing that there's the possibility is there that he will take that with him, into the next generation or wherever he's going,
Oh,
perhaps. Mhm.
Cool. In this age where families are sometimes continents apart, how do we harness and make use of these Indigenous knowledge systems, the storytelling and the history?
Yeah, it can be hard now when families are seas apart. But I have noticed that in many families, I saw a friend of mine the other day on Facebook, I think, sharing how they, their partner reunited with a family member of theirs, and I think that each family usually I'm seeing this a lot with a lot of families. There is that person that pays attention to their family tree. So like these online family trees that people do, I think you have those people. So you might have one person in Canada, one person in London, one person in South Africa, and through that connections are made. So I think even if we are in an online world, that is seas apart, the possibility is still there of making connections, such as the family trees, these websites that are there available to use. That's also helping quite a lot. And of course,
Awesome.
one thing I should add here is the art of writing and letter writing that we seem to be forgetting a lot. That's one thing we can also add here. If you have someone that lives, someplace else, write them something, send it to them, right? Um, it's not like writing an email. I find that when you write someone something, it's going to mean a lot to them. They'll hold it, they'll treasure it, and it'll have some good meaning to it.
Very true. That's so true. I'm not seeing any more questions come in. I can give it a couple more seconds if anyone has anything. Otherwise, just wait a minute. Oh, another one. The importance of storytelling passes on traditions to prepare for the future. With that being said, how do we continue to share our experience to unite rather than divide at the expense of others?
Well, I think what I actually tried to do today was precisely that. Because I find that sometimes when you talk about, Black History Month, we tend to talk about all the terrible things that are happening or have happened, right? And that can also, I mean, it's good to talk about those things. It's very important, but I think we talk about those things on a daily basis. And what I wanted to achieve tonight was to just emphasize that these things, such as storytelling, oral history, family history, are also important, and we cannot forget them.
Well said. Um, Deanne asks, you talk about the wisdom of our elders and the importance of learning lessons. What was the most important lesson you were taught growing up?
Is this from grandmother or anyone?
Oh, I would think anybody. Or Deanne, what would you like to know? Grandmother.
Grandmother. To never forget who I am. And that was part of the scolding that I got when I had not, done the right thing in meeting, the long lost cousin the first time, not knowing that they were my cousin, right? To that pride, right? This is who I am when I'm meeting someone else. These are the family names associated with me. This is the ID. And of course, the cousin will be able to make the connection. I had failed to do that, but that is a big takeaway from grandmother, to always know who you are.
Beautiful. I'll give it one more second and see if another question comes in. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Jessica. Just give it a second. Okay. I think we're good here. Thank you. That was very well said, and definitely brought me a lot of joy listening to you. So thank you for taking the time tonight and speaking with us. So I'll hand it over to Jessica Allen, our chair of the History Committee.
Hi, on behalf of OMA, thank you, Tshweu, for sharing your fascinating story with us tonight. Your insights on history, family, and the wisdom of elders gave us so much to reflect on. Please, everyone, join us next month for our next history speaker series on March 19th, featuring Natalie Burton, an artist of French, Métis, and Algonquin ancestry. Her work spans painting, illustration, photography, and traditional crafts, exploring themes of culture and identity. Thanks, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.